All right, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get kicked off on our webinar. I'm Amy Lasik with Kirkwood Community College, and this is the third webinar in a three-part series on Industry 4.0. This is the Industry 4.0 Resources to Help Manufacturers webinar. We had two other webinars the last two Wednesdays. The first one was Industry 4.0, Why Should We All Care? And the second one was Industry 4.0, How is Iowa Responding? We do have those webinars recorded. If any of you are interested, able to make it, you can put your email address in the chat box and we will make sure we send you a recording. You can also find those recordings on our Kirkwood Corporate Training Facebook page and our Kirkwood Corporate Training LinkedIn page as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have two presentations today. One with Jill Lippincott with Iowa Economic Development Authority and Tyler McCarville with Kirkwood Community College. We're going to be giving you a lot of information, so we certainly hope if you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat box. We'll monitor those, and then we'll also give you some contact information that you can contact us afterwards if you have any questions. So without further ado, I am going to pass it on to Jill, who will do a presentation about some exciting things that IEDA is going to be doing in the realm of 4.0.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I'm going just to shift over to share my screen. Please let me know once you are viewing that, if you are able to see my screen and the slide that I'm sharing.
Looks great, Jill.
Okay, great. Well, just let me know if anything goes wonky. I will rely on your verbal or audible cues. So as Amy said, I'm Jill Lippincott with Iowa Economic Development Authority. I have been with IEDA for a little over 5 years in the team lead position with the Innovation and Workforce team. And I've worked with many of our community colleges and manufacturers over the last few years. Actually, in the workforce realm, I've worked primarily supporting registered apprenticeship through some of our registered apprenticeship programs. But I've also worked to support small businesses through one of our targeted small business programs. And so I was able to bring a lot of that into this role in the last year as I took on the Manufacturing 4.0 plan, which we'll talk a little bit about. In the last year, we've all been through so much. And in the middle of that, IEDA launched an initiative to look a little bit deeper into Manufacturing 4.0, what it is, and how it was affecting our targeted industries in the state of Iowa. So again, advanced manufacturing is one of our targeted industries that we focus on here at IEDA, in addition to the biosciences, finance and insurance, IT, and education technology. These are really the pillars that we focus on, but advanced manufacturing is one of the biggest areas of GDP in the state of Iowa. It really accounts for more than 30 billion actually of the state's GDP. And we know that 23% of work hours will be automated by 2030. It is also expected to create jobs. I think it's often heard when we talk about automation that this will be something that will replace jobs. And this is really one of those myths, because automation is actually expected to create jobs. And as again, working in the workforce area that I've heard from many of our employers, and specifically in manufacturing, that quite honestly, there aren't enough people to fill the jobs that we have currently. So we really feel like automation will actually help to augment the work and production that we have and the needs that we have, and help us shift maybe the workforce that we have currently doing production heavy jobs into some higher skilled, higher value added type of occupations. So we are really excited to take this on to focus and do a deep dive in manufacturing, that big area of our state's GDP, and look at where our state's manufacturers are with their journey for Manufacturing 4.0, because we knew it was coming. We could see from the reports that were coming out that this was something that was going to change the industry. And as we all know, we call it Manufacturing 4.0 because it's the fourth evolution of the industry. Now, when I talk about Manufacturing 4.0, there's been a few places where I will look out into the crowd and I'm just getting totally like blank stares. But when I start to break it down and I start to talk about maybe it's simulation or additive manufacturing or cloud computing or robotics or cobots, that's when a lot of folks say, oh yeah, we do that. You know, that is something we're already doing actually in a lot of cases. So it really encompasses a lot of things. And so I always try to kind of ask or inquire about what manufacturers are kind of already doing with their digital technologies, because in a lot of cases, it's already out there. We found that in a lot of places, I think some of these technologies are being utilized. What I think we'll see is some of those technologies being connected in a systematic way that creates a system rather than just one-off solutions. And so that's really this next wave of Industry 4.0. It's really about connectivity, and not just connectivity within a facility in and of itself, but connectivity into the overall ecosystem and supply chain that a manufacturer is a part of. So we're really excited to help manufacturers with that journey. We learned a lot through the process about where manufacturers in Iowa were. There's definitely a scale and a range. We worked with Teconomy Partners, a group out of Ohio. They've done a number of different reports for IEDA over the years, and so they're very familiar with Iowa's industries. And they were able to talk with a lot of our manufacturers about kind of where are you at, and get really honest about where are things at with the journey in Iowa. So the overall focus of this plan is really to help Iowa become a high adoption state for Industry 4.0, no matter where those manufacturers were on that journey. And we did find that range. So we have our very large OEM manufacturers who are leading the way in some cases with Industry 4.0 technologies. We have others who maybe haven't even started, but by and large, I think most people were aware that this was coming. We're aware that digitalization of the manufacturing industry was the next wave. What we heard a lot was that they didn't know where to start. And so really, this was perfect timing for this plan, because it really allowed us to kind of take a inventory of the resources available, understand what we could bring together, including the community college partners, to help really give answers to that. Where do I start? Where do I go? How do I know what to start with? So, like I said, we actually started down this road in about January of 2020. As we all know, about March of 2020, we hit pause on that because we knew our manufacturers were dealing with so much more at the time, and wanted to make sure we weren't, nobody wanted to sit in a focus group about Industry 4.0 in March of 2020. But right about May, June or so, I started reaching out to a few resource partners and kind of saying, what do you think is the right timing for this? And they encouraged me to reach out to manufacturers. And honestly, I had to say the overwhelming response was, we need this now more than ever. It really is about business resiliency. And yes, COVID is still something we're sorting out, but what we recognize is that manufacturing 4.0 and automation is going to help us address the next thing, the next issue that comes up that's going to disrupt our industry. So it really was an overwhelming response that manufacturers were ready to start having the discussions and getting back into the work. So we engaged over, I think, 120 stakeholders, from resource partners to manufacturing leaders. We did focus groups. We had to do them all virtual. I will say it wasn't what we had planned, but it did allow us actually to go into spaces we weren't going to be able to go to. We were able to go in different parts of the state. We weren't going to be able to take Teconomy, our partners from Ohio, before. So that was really nice. We engaged legislators, community college leaders, universities, just any partner that we could. Those that supply to manufacturers, even, to really gauge and understand the industry. This was released in February of 2021, so right as the legislative session was gaining full steam, and we were able to get a few early successes this first session in 2021. You can find the report on our website. There is an executive summary as well as the full report that is out there. So focus areas for the report were 5 different pillars. And, this is really where we started out with, and we gave ourselves the freedom to say, okay, this may not be where we'll end up. looks like I've got a little bit of automation issues, but I'll go through them for you real quickly. So one, where we're at with adopting and utilizing manufacturing 4.0 technology. So that's really just where are we at with the range of our manufacturers doing this work. The other piece was enabling infrastructure for digital technologies. So if we want to do manufacturing 4.0, do we have the infrastructure to do that? Improving supply chain linkages. So as we all know, we can't talk manufacturing without talking supply chain. Accelerating manufacturing startups and scale-ups. I will say this was maybe a little bit more of a minor area of focus, but we do want to create an ecosystem. So a part of my work in working with small businesses and entrepreneurs is actually helping them start new innovations in spaces such as manufacturing and IT. And we want the new technologies that are being developed for manufacturing 4.0 to start here in Iowa. So we have several great examples of startups and companies that are using companies that are developing technologies that are used by our manufacturers here in Iowa that are Industry 4.0 technologies and are helping our workplaces be more efficient and safer because of those innovative ideas and patented technologies developed here. So there is an ecosystem for that. Again, I think that's one of our more minor areas, but something we didn't want to ignore. And then, of course, finally, probably the biggest piece is ensuring an effective workforce. So we can't talk manufacturing 4.0 growth, can't talk manufacturing growth without talking about the workforce. So these were all the pieces that we folded in. I will say this is not a do this first and then go here and then go here. It's not a linear process. So you will see us roll out areas of focus for this initiative in different ways. So this last legislative session, we did have 2 really great successes, and I'll talk about the grants here more in depth. But the one piece that is great for everybody is the bonus depreciation, which conforms with the federal government's allowances for businesses to declare bonus depreciation their first year. This was not just for manufacturing, which is actually what we had originally proposed. It actually is for everyone, so not just for manufacturers. So that's something that Iowa has not done for years and years, and now we're able to do. But the other piece that is not on here, because quite honestly, we can't claim credit for, but it was kind of a part of our area of focus, is the infrastructure. So going back to that, enabling the infrastructure for digital technologies, as you all know, broadband was a huge focus this last year of the legislative session, and Governor Reynolds heard that loud and clear. And really our input to all of that was that manufacturers have a seat at the table. So when we talk broadband, I know we talk about the needs for, healthcare and education and personal home use. We also just wanted to make sure that we had manufacturers in mind and their upload and download speeds that they also needed in order to be able to be sharing data and information into the supply chain that they're a part of. So that was something that we just really pushed, and we're in conversation with those who were really taking the lead on that to help them understand that our manufacturers had needs in that area too. So the big piece though is the grants for small to medium-sized manufacturers that invest in smart technologies. And that's what I'm really excited to talk about today. So I will focus a little bit more on that. The spoiler alert to this is that they're not out there yet, but they do go live in September. But I am excited to be talking about them because there are a few ways that manufacturers that are eligible for these grants can prepare to apply for them once that application goes live in September. So the grant program is for small to medium-sized manufacturers with less than 75 employees. Does have to be within the manufacturing NAICS codes of 31 to 33, and at least 51% of your revenue from the sale of your manufactured goods. So that's something that to keep in mind. There is sort of a scoring mechanism. If you have manufactured goods and at least 51% of your revenue is from the sale of those manufactured goods, you may qualify. We'll say that's going to be something that's factored in as a part of a scoring. The higher your revenue from that, your manufactured goods, the higher the scale or the score. And in operation for at least 3 years. This is only because we do have other funding programs for startups who are really just getting started. So we're really looking to support those who have been in operation and are looking to make further investments in the technologies that they might be using. So the grants are matching grants. It is a one-to-one match, and I'll get into kind of the two different levels here momentarily, but this is the biggest key. We are requiring that manufacturers undergo an assessment with our partners at CIRRUS, the Center for Industrial Research and Service. CIRRUS has an Industry 4.0 assessment. Actually, they have a series of assessments, the very easy, quick 10-minute survey you can take. The second tier is the one we're requiring. It's a little bit more in-depth. It can be done online, but it does require you to maybe upload some photos or videos of what you're currently doing and maybe what you're looking to do, and they can kind of give you some ideas. I will say CIRRUS has, I've been in several conversations with them because we built them into the code for this program. They know that many folks kind of come to the table knowing what they need to do. And sometimes it's a matter of having somebody else validate that. And so CIRRUS, if you already know, like, hey, we're wanting to invest in this, and here's the area we think we need to go, they'll help you validate that and maybe ask questions you haven't thought about. They do have a third tier, which is where they come on site and spend a little bit more time with you. And that's great. We'll accept it. We're not requiring that level. The reason we are talking about the grants before they're out there, though, is so that folks know that this is a requirement. And they can reach out to CIRRUS in advance and get in the queue to get a CIRRUS assessment, so that once the grant program becomes available, I think middle of September or so, they will know that they have all of those pieces ready for the application. So there are two tiers of the grant program. We know that with technology and Industry 4.0, it isn't just equipment. It could also be software. And we built this so that manufacturers can actually apply for both grants at the same time. There's a $50,000 grant available, again, one-to-one match. So we do require a cash match of $50,000 for the $50,000 grant for equipment. For that's the purchase of specialized equipment, really that hard capital expenditures. And then there's the Industrial Internet of Things investment grants, and that's a $25,000 grant. Again, that's really more for your hardware or software cost to support the Industry 4.0 technologies. You could apply for one or the other. You could apply for both at the same time, but applicants are capped at this point at a total of $75,000 for the lifetime of the grant program. So it may be that you apply for a $25,000 investment this year, and next year another $25,000 IoT grant, and the following year a $25,000 equipment grant, and you've gotten 3 grants over the lifetime, and you're capped then at the $75,000 mark. But you don't have to do it all at once. You can do it over time. Just know that it will be capped eventually at that $75,000 level. But again, you could submit 2 grants from the onset if you wanted to do $75,000 from the get-go. So more will be shared. I do have a fact sheet. Amy, I'm happy to share that out with you. It's going to cover basically the same that I've listed out here. We do have a website that we'll be launching here officially soon that the applications will go live through. So once they are live, we'll put that out. We'll be circulating that, and there will be a lot of information that will be found. A lot of people have asked, well, how can I make sure that I don't miss out, that I know where this is going to be, that I know where the application is? Don't worry. We are sending out a mailing, actually, hopefully to arrive in your mailboxes next week to all manufacturers with more than 3 employees, with the executive summary, a letter from our director, information about the fact sheet, fact sheet, information about the grant program should be arriving to you soon. If you don't receive that mailing, give it maybe to the end of next week. Please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to send it out. In fact, we figured we'd probably be doing a second mailing because our data sources are only so great sometimes. And so if we missed you, please let us know. We'd love to send that out to you. We can send it out by email if you want it sooner than a mailing, but we'd love to get you the actual hard copy of our executive summary of the Manufacturing 4.0 report and the grant fact sheet program. So we'll be doing that along with the website launch. We're also working with the community colleges, which I know Tyler will be talking about here soon, to really put together a robust curriculum. Going into that workforce piece, we know that there's going to be a shift in, and again, how some of the technologies augment the workforce and how the training and curriculum to support that upskilling of maybe your current workforce can allow you to take workforce that you have and put them into different occupations or utilize them in different ways. So I won't steal Tyler's thunder on that, but I'll let him cover that. Again, grant program launch. We are also developing, and I won't get too much into this because quite honestly, it's not developed yet, but you'll hear more about it here soon. We're developing a portal for our manufacturers in Iowa to connect to each other. One of the other things that we heard is that there are just misconnections made, and our ecosystem in Iowa for manufacturers to connect, to find each other as suppliers is often hard. Sometimes you're literally Googling and you're literally finding the person who does the best at SEO, work, and that they're the ones that pop up first. So we're developing a portal that will be free for manufacturers to participate in, free for our larger manufacturers to post RFQs and allow some of that engagement back and forth with each other and just allow people to connect. We also have an OEM advisory group who is connecting with us and telling us about their needs from suppliers. What do they need, and what are they not able to source globally, and they could really use more regionally and closer to home and develop things based upon their needs so we can build our ecosystem for suppliers here in Iowa. And as a part of that, we are developing out some activities as a part of October. Manufacturing Day is October 1st. We're going to build it out to be a month and create some tours, some one-on-one mentoring opportunities with some of our manufacturers. And then again, just some opportunities to connect and learn about some of the resources that are available here in Iowa, like the TechWorks facility, our community colleges, the manufacturing hub in the Quad Cities, et cetera. So some really great things coming forward. And that's not even, we're not even to the next legislative session yet. So who knows what will happen next spring. That is all I have, but I'm always happy to take questions at the end or whenever you'd like, Amy, or if you'd want to send out my email, I'm happy to answer questions via email too.
Great, Jill, that was fantastic. Some really exciting things happening for manufacturers through IEDA right now. So that's really very cool. And I know just based off of the conversations I've had with employers, a lot of them have interest in moving forward with these things, but money, financials have always been a consideration. So this is a great time for them to access these funds and see where they might be able to apply them within their plants.
Yeah, the idea is it really does help mitigate that first step and some of the risk involved, the financial risk especially. We heard that a lot through our conversations was, we know we need to make these investments. It's coming. It's just a lot, and it's hard to see the ROI right away. So the grants were really developed out of the idea that we want to provide our manufacturers with just to help de-risk that a little bit for them. I will say we are one of only about 3 states that are doing grant programs. We had to search far and wide to find another state and kind of ask them questions about how they've developed theirs. So on the one hand, we are front of the class. On the other hand, we didn't have a lot to base this off of. So we'll see how this goes this first year. We might develop it out and build on it, as it grows. But we are excited to be leading the way. In fact, we've gotten just calls from other states who have heard we're doing this and who are really interested because they want to do it now and are interested to see how this goes.
That's great. I think the other thing that strikes me as really exciting about this is all the partnerships that are involved with this. The extra layer of having Cirrus there as helping with the upfront assessment, the community college assisting with the training. I think that's really exciting and a great collaboration to help support all our manufacturers as well.
Yeah, and it is truly, takes a village, right? So one of the things you'll see on our site, the site that is rolled out this fall, is a resources page, and we've been actually working to build it out these last few weeks to make sure that any resource that is available is listed, whether it's you want to get into registered apprenticeship, whether it's you're looking at training opportunities through your local community college, the TechWorks facility, or the Quad Cities Manufacturing Hub, or Cirrus, or our universities. Our universities are great partners too. So every resource that Techonomy really documented in that report is listed out there, so that, again, there's kind of a one place to find it all. We heard that from manufacturers too, was there's a lot of information out there. We know there is, but we really would love to have it in one place.
That's great. Thanks so much, Jill. And as Jill mentioned, she has that fact sheet that we will make sure gets out to anybody who registered for any 3 of the webinars, as well as Jill's contact information too. So if you have follow-up questions later on, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer those for you.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, Tyler, I know you have a couple slides you want to pull up, so we'll let you get those pulled up. And Tyler McCarville with Kirkwood Community College is going to talk a little bit about our 260E program that I know many manufacturers participate in, but it's also a program that we hear a lot of questions about. And it's a program that can certainly assist many manufacturers get to that next level as well. So Tyler, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. As Amy mentioned, my name is Tyler McCarville. I've been at Kirkwood for about 8 years now, and my primary role at the college is managing the Iowa New Jobs Training Program, which is a long title that no one uses. Really, everyone calls it by the Iowa code, which is 260E. So again, my primary role here at the college is managing this really fantastic program, incentive program that the state has. And I'm able to work with, companies here in our 7-county region to help them through the process, do some myth busting on different things that they may think about the program. So it's a really great opportunity for myself, and I really enjoy working with all of our companies out in our region. So, and as Jill mentioned, it really dovetails nicely, I think, into the Industry 4.0 initiative that's getting rolled out. Because as companies are maybe bringing on some new equipment or different processes, there's a lot of training that's involved with that. So I think this program can really be a good partnership with the Industry 4.0 initiative. So what is it? The Iowa New Jobs Training Program, really what it is it provides businesses who are expanding their workforce here in the state of Iowa with training funds to support those new folks coming on. Any upskilling, development of those new folks, any sort of training, this program supports businesses in that cost of upskilling those employees. So really, it fosters Iowa's workforce, and then it also enables businesses and industries to remain competitive in the state with other states, really. So how the program works, it's facilitated through IEDA, through Jill's organization, but it's actually administered locally with your local community college. So if you are in Des Moines and you'd like to apply for the program, unlike a lot of the programs that IEDA has where you apply directly through them, this one you would actually apply through your local community college. So again, if you're in Des Moines, you'd apply through DMAC. If you're in Kirkwood's region, you'd apply through Kirkwood. And what it does is the training fund is for new employees based off of the wages of each new position that the company is adding. The training fund is financed by the sale of bonds each year. So what the community colleges do is we look at how many new jobs the company is adding, and we do a projection over 10 years and how much of a tax credit they calculate, or that calculates out to. And then we sell a bond based off of those numbers, and each company in that bond year has a portion of that bond relative to the number of new jobs that they've added, as well as the salaries associated with those positions. So the benefit to the company is instead of paying for the training of those new folks out of their own pocket, you're able to get reimbursed at 100% of the training expense through this tax credit. And then the company repays the bond by diverting a portion of the new employees withholding that they would normally send to the state. You then send that to your local community college, in our case, Kirkwood, and then that offsets the cost of the bond sale. So really, if the easy way I think to think about it is normally a company is sending all of their withholding to the state each quarter. As a part of the 260E program, what you're doing is you're able to take a portion of that withholding that you'd normally send to the state, and you're able to get that on the back end and reimburse yourself for any training expenses. So this is an example of a 260E agreement. So company X is hiring 37 new employees. All of them qualify for a 3% tax credit. So really, the 3% is the maximum that a company can get. All jobs qualify for a 1.5% tax credit, and then if they meet the labor shed wage, they qualify for an additional 1.5% for a total of 3%. So in this example, I assume that all 37 positions qualify for a 3% tax credit. That meant for a total issuance for this imaginary company of 270,000. So really, I think what's the most important to companies is what the training fund would be. There are some administrative costs that get taken off the top. But in this case, in this example, the company would have a training fund of just over $200,000. So it's a really great opportunity for companies to not only save a little bit of money, but then also invest in their employees. Studies have found that when you invest in your employees, when they feel like they're valued and they're getting training opportunities, they're a lot more likely to stay on with your company because they're happier in those roles. So I think it's a great program because it helps out the state. It encourages companies who are growing and expanding to stay in the state and continue to grow in the state. It helps the company, obviously, because you're going to save some money on training expenses you would normally pay out of your own pocket. And then it helps the employees because, as they continue to learn more, it's always a good thing for the employee. So who qualifies? You must be located in or relocating to Iowa. You must be engaged in some sort of interstate or intrastate commerce in the fields of manufacturing, processing, assembling products, warehousing, wholesaling, conducting research and development. So, those are some very broad categories. I think one of the things that I run into when I talk to companies, well, two things really. I often hear, boy, I wish I would have known about this program 6 months ago because we've added employees in the last 6 months. So one is just getting word of mouth out there that this fantastic program is out there. And then two, I often hear companies say, I really, I don't think I would qualify, or it sounds too good to be true. Really, if your company engages in some sort of interstate commerce, it's very likely that you would qualify for the program. Some of the companies that wouldn't qualify would be like a local brick and mortar store or a restaurant, those sort of things. Or if a company has multiple locations in the state and the company downsizes in one part of the state and then pops up in another part, that would be another case where you wouldn't qualify. But by and large, most companies do qualify for the program. And on top of that, I would also say any new job would also qualify. So a lot of times people think, well, it's got to be a really high paying job. It doesn't. It really, any job that the company adds is eligible for the program. These are some examples of eligible reimbursement expenses. This is another fantastic component of the program. Really the state has done a good job, I think, in saying, the state's not going to tell you how to spend your money. Really, I think the companies know best on how they want to spend those funds. So the eligible training reimbursement expenses is really up to the company. It's very few and far between when a company asks for something and we tell them no. So these are just some examples. Whatever the company's training fund is, really it gets broken up into two 50% pots. The first 50% we calculate for on-the-job training wage reimbursement. So what that is the state recognizes when you bring on a new employee on day one, they're probably not going to really know how to do their job 100% right away. So that's a sunk cost for the company. So the state does allow for on-the-job training wage reimbursement up to 50% of your total training fund. So that's the first 50%. The second 50% would be for any ongoing training that the company does. So it could be things like using Kirkwood as your outside vendor to come in and do a training for your new folks. conferences that you might have. A lot of companies have tuition reimbursement programs. That would be an eligible expense. Pre-employment skill assessment testing is another one. We don't have a lot of companies that utilize it, but I do think it would be a great thing for companies to take on. You know, the idea with that is if you have a pool of candidates that you are interested in hiring from, you can do some skill assessment testing or some pre-employment training before you hire them, and you can use the 260E funds to reimburse yourself. Internal training, we do have some companies who have subject matter experts on staff already. So what that would be is if you are the subject matter expert and you spend 20 hours of your time developing a training, actually conducting the training, 20 hours of the trainer's time in this example would be reimbursable. So that's another great component of the 260E program. And then anything else that goes along with training, things like books, software, online videos, that would be a reimbursable expense. Training equipment is another one that we see once in a while, but if you have any sort of piece of equipment that you solely use for training expenses or training for training only, that would be a reimbursable expense. And then if you have any travel expenses related to training, that would also be a reimbursable expense. So that's really, that's a very high level overview of what is included, but oftentimes we'll have companies come to us with stuff that we've never thought of before. And most times we do allow that for reimbursement. So this is just kind of an overview of our bonds over the last 10 or 11 years at this point. So you can see it kind of fluctuates year to year, but it really, what we want to do with companies, and maybe my main takeaway that I would say today is, one, don't think that it's too good to be true. And two, the process of applying for the program is very easy. I think a lot of people, another misconception of the program is people think there's a lot of red tape or it's going to take a lot of time on the back end. Really, I think if you talk to companies who have been in the program for a long time, they'll tell you it's actually pretty easy to manage. So the application process probably would take a company 5 or 10 minutes to start and to complete, I should say. It's the front and back of a piece of paper. It's basic information about the company, and we call that a preliminary agreement. The preliminary agreement is non-binding. So if a company submits it and then never actually follows through with it, they're not obligated to anything. But the benefit of submitting that preliminary agreement is it draws the line in the sand, because as I said earlier, this tax credit is for any net new positions that the company is adding. So the purpose of drawing the line in the sand is saying, okay, as of today, we have 20 employees, and that preliminary agreement sets your base level of employment at 20. And then any jobs that are added over that number would then be eligible for the tax credit. So even when I talk to companies and they say, boy, we have no idea if we're going to grow. I don't know if it's the right program for us. I always encourage them, listen, the application takes 5 or 10 minutes. It's non-binding. It's not going to hurt you. The worst case scenario is you fill it out and you never act on it and you lose the 5 or 10 minutes it took you to fill out that application. Versus, the benefit is, boy, I didn't know if we were going to grow, and all of a sudden things went really well for us. And now all of a sudden I'm in a place where I can capture that growth and get these training dollars. So that's the first part, is executing a preliminary agreement. That puts you in a good place to then execute what we call a final agreement. And that's what I was talking about earlier with the bond sale. So at that point, a company would say, okay, since we signed the preliminary agreement, we've grown by 10, 20, 50 employees. We get a list of those job titles and salaries associated with those job titles. And we say, okay, based off of X number of positions, making X number of dollars, here's what your training fund would be. That goes into the bond sale. And then the revenue from the bond sale makes up your training fund. And you have access to 10 years worth of tax credits in a lump sum upfront. So these are just some of the partners that we work with. I think, if you're watching this webinar, you're probably associated with one or maybe more of these partners. So they're a great resource. If you do have more interest in it and you want to talk to maybe a third party about how the program works, the good, bad, and the ugly, anything like that, these are a great resource to reach out to. I would also encourage you, Amy will have my contact information, the email that we send out. Please reach out to me if you have questions. If you think it's too scary, I'm here to walk you through it, and I think you'll find it's a pretty easy program to manage. So, any questions for me?
Great. Tyler, thanks so much. One of the things that struck me as I heard you and Jill present today is what a nice complement 260E could be to companies that are taking advantage of these new grants that are coming out with IEDA. If they have new employees and they've just invested in some new software or invested in some new equipment, and now we're needing to train those new positions, it's a nice complement and a nice support system to make kind of a scary change for some employers. So it's nice to make sure that information's out for our employers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think Kirkwood has a lot of great resources, especially with the 260E program. So we have a number of people that work on the program. So if you think, boy, we're so busy already, how are we going to take this other thing on? We really help you walk through the reimbursement process, the withholding process. We make it, I think, very simple for companies. So if you think, it's just one more thing we can't take on at this point, don't let that hold you back.
Great. I think that's a key message I've heard from both your presentations is when in doubt, go ahead and reach out to somebody. We will help you get through the process. We want to see you be successful, and there's all these resources out there to help you right now. So let's take advantage of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Kylie, did we have any questions come in as our presenters presented here in the last 40 minutes or so?
No, we've got a quiet group today. No questions.
All right. Tyler and Jill, any last minute words that you want to share?
I would just echo, Tyler's thoughts of if you have any questions or really just want to think through again where to get started or want an introduction to CIRRUS, if you'd like, we'd be happy to help facilitate that to start that assessment process so you can be ready for those grants to open in September if you qualify.
Great. Well, I want to thank both Tyler and Jill for their time this morning. They gave a lot of information, great information. So we will make sure we follow up with an email to anybody who had registered for this webinar and past webinars with their contact information. I'll get the fact sheet from Jill and we'll make sure that's connected as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to get a hold of somebody that has been on the webinar or at Kirkwood Community College or your community college if you're not in Kirkwood's region, and we'll make sure we get you to the right spot. So thanks again, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thank you.